Hello everyone, welcome back to Buried Files. Tonight, we bring you 7 of the most disturbing true police horror stories ever documented. Stories that will make you question everything you thought you knew about law enforcement and the inexplicable darkness that sometimes seeps into our institutions. These are not fictional tales, but real accounts from active and former officers who encountered things during their service that cannot be explained by procedure manuals or rational thinking. Each story has been carefully verified through official incident reports, witness testimonies, and supporting documentation that we have spent months gathering and cross-referencing. What you are about to hear comes from men and women who took an oath to protect and serve, only to discover that some threats exist beyond the scope of their training or understanding. If you appreciate authentic horror content that explores the terrifying intersection of duty and the unknown, subscribe to Buried Files and hit the notification bell so you never miss our deep investigations into cases that departments would rather keep buried. After you listen to these haunting accounts from behind the badge, we want to hear from you in the comments below about whether you believe some truths are too dangerous to be officially acknowledged. Now settle in as we examine 7 cases that prove the thin blue line sometimes separates us from something far more sinister than crime. I have not been able to enter a basement since I left the department 3 years ago. The smell alone, that combination of concrete and stale air, brings everything back with a clarity I do not want. My therapist says avoidance is not healthy, that I need to confront what happened at the Monroe County Police Department between August and November of 2021. But she was not there. She did not see what I saw in that evidence room, did not watch files rearrange themselves while the security cameras recorded nothing but static. She cannot understand that some things are better left buried, even if they refuse to stay that way. My name is Carter, and for 8 months I worked as a records clerk in a precinct that should have been condemned decades ago. The building dated back to 1967, all cinder block walls and linoleum floors that curled up at the edges. Budget cuts meant renovations never happened, so we worked around the water stains on the ceiling and the electrical outlets that sparked when you plugged anything in. The evidence room sat in the basement, accessible only by a concrete stairwell that always felt 10 degrees colder than the rest of the building. No windows, no natural light, just fluorescent tubes that hummed like they were trying to communicate something you could not quite hear. I transferred there from a larger department in the city, looking for something quieter after my partner was killed during a routine traffic stop. The counselor said a change of environment would help with the nightmares. Monroe County seemed perfect. Population 23,000, low crime rate, the kind of place where the biggest scandal was someone stealing lawn ornaments. The evidence room position opened up after the previous clerk retired early for medical reasons nobody wanted to discuss. I should have asked more questions about that. My supervisor was a sergeant named Whitmore, 47 years old with silver hair he kept in a military cut, and a way of looking past you instead of at you when he spoke. He showed me the evidence room on my first day, explained the filing system they had been using since the 1980s. Everything organized by case number, oldest cases toward the back wall, newest near the front. Simple enough. He handed me the only key to the room, an old brass thing that looked like it belonged in a Victorian novel, and told me I was responsible for checking items in and out, maintaining the log, and conducting monthly inventories. The first week was unremarkable. I cataloged evidence from a handful of minor cases, theft, vandalism, one domestic dispute that resulted in a smashed television. I worked alone most of the time, which suited me fine. The silence down there felt protective, like being wrapped in layers of insulation from the world above. I could hear the building settling, pipes clanking, footsteps in the hallway overhead. But otherwise, it was just me and boxes full of other people's worst days. The first strange thing I noticed was on a Thursday afternoon in my second week. I had been organizing files from 2003, creating a digital backup of paper records that should have been scanned years ago. I took a break around 3 in the afternoon, left the file box on my desk, went upstairs for coffee. When I came back 15 minutes later, the box had been moved to the floor beside the door. Not knocked over, not disturbed, just relocated with the lid still perfectly in place. I figured maybe someone came looking for something while I was gone, though nobody had signed the log and the door had been locked. I was the only one with a key. It happened again 2 days later, this time with a box of evidence from a 1997 burglary case I had pulled for an attorney's review. I set it on the metal examination table in the center of the room, spent 20 minutes photographing the contents for the digital archive. Stepped into the bathroom for maybe 3 minutes. Came back to find the box on my desk chair, contents rearranged in alphabetical order instead of chronological like I had them. The hair on the back of my neck stood up, but I told myself I was just forgetting things. Stress from the transfer, lingering trauma from losing my partner. The mind plays tricks when you are not sleeping well. By the end of September, I could not pretend anymore. Items were moving when I was not in the room, and not just boxes. Individual evidence bags would migrate from one shelf to another overnight. The log showed entries I had not written, my handwriting, but documenting transactions I had no memory of performing. A blood-stained jacket from a 2015 assault case appeared in the section for 1989 cases. A murder weapon, a kitchen knife, in a sealed evidence bag, moved from its designated spot to sitting upright on my desk. Blade pointing toward the door like a warning. I brought it up with Whitmore during our weekly meeting. Tried to sound casual, mentioned items seemed to be getting misfiled. Maybe we had a security issue. His face did something I cannot quite describe. Not anger exactly, more like recognition. Like he had been waiting for me to notice. He asked me which items specifically, and when I started listing them, he cut me off and said the evidence room had always been temperamental. Those were his exact words. Temperamental. Like it was a moody teenager instead of an inanimate storage facility. He told me the previous clerk, a man named Donovan, had reported similar issues before his medical retirement. And before Donovan, there had been someone else who left suddenly after only 3 months. Whitmore said the building was old, foundation settling, temperature fluctuations causing boxes to shift. He said it with a straight face, as if boxes could rearrange themselves alphabetically due to humidity. I started keeping my own log, separate from the official one. Documented every anomaly with timestamps and photographs. On October 3rd, I arrived at 7 in the morning to find every single box from 2012 stacked in a pyramid in the center of the room. Each one opened with contents spread around the base like offerings at an altar. The security camera footage showed nothing, just 8 hours of an empty room, even though I could see in the recording that the lights were on when they should have been off. I saved the footage to a thumb drive and hid it in my car. That afternoon, I started researching the building's history. The precinct was built on the site of an old county jail that burned down in 1952, killing 6 inmates and 2 guards. Before that, it had been a courthouse where a judge named Harlan Cross presided over cases from 1923 until his death in 1949. I found his obituary in the county archives. It mentioned his meticulous record-keeping, how he personally maintained files on every case that came through his court, storing them in the courthouse basement where he would spend hours organizing and reorganizing them. Colleagues said he claimed the files spoke to him, told him when justice had been served, and when it had not. I found something else too. Between 1952 and 1967, the vacant lot where they eventually built the precinct was used as temporary evidence storage for the county. Cases that were closed but not yet archived. Physical evidence that needed to be held for appeals or retrials. Hundreds of boxes sitting in a metal shed on that exact spot, the same ground where my evidence room now stood. And during those 15 years, 4 different evidence custodians reported breakdowns, hallucinations, one of them walking into traffic claiming files were chasing him. I stopped going down there alone. Started propping the door open so I could hear if anyone was coming down the stairs. But the things I was seeing were not being caused by people. On October 19th, I watched a case file from 1987 slide off a shelf by itself, fall to the floor, and open to a specific page. A missing persons case. A woman named Rebecca Marsh, who disappeared after leaving work one night, never found. Case went cold. I picked up the file and saw someone had written in fresh ink at the bottom of the last page. Check 2019 traffic fatality. Victim Marsh, Rebecca M. Same handwriting as the rest of the file, same pen, but the ink was wet. I checked. We had a 2019 traffic fatality. Woman in her 50s hit by a drunk driver. Rebecca M. Marsh. She had been living 3 counties over under her middle name after fleeing an abusive husband in 1987. The file had solved itself. I brought this to Whitmore with my hands shaking. Showed him the notation, the wet ink, the connection between cases 32 years apart. He took the file, read it carefully, and then locked it in his desk drawer. Told me not to mention this to anyone, that it would complicate both cases unnecessarily. When I pressed him, asked him what was happening down there, he finally told me the truth. The evidence room did not just store physical objects. It stored something else, something that had been there since before the precinct was built. Maybe since Judge Cross had been filing his cases in that courthouse basement a century ago. Whatever it was, it wanted cases solved. It wanted justice, even if that meant reaching across decades to connect dots that living people could not see. Whitmore said, as long as I did my job and let the room do what it needed to do, I would be fine. Previous clerks who fought it, who tried to rationalize it or expose it, they were the ones who broke down. The ones who accepted it, who worked with it, they lasted longer. He had been there 30 years and learned to just document what the room showed him, close the cases it wanted closed, and not ask questions about methodology. I wish I could say I walked out that day and never came back. But I needed the job, needed the insurance for therapy, needed the structure to keep myself from falling apart completely after everything that happened in the city. So I went back down to that basement and tried to make peace with working alongside something I could not name or understand. November brought the case files that appeared before the crimes happened. I would find folders dated a week in the future, containing evidence that did not exist yet. A breaking and entering scheduled for November 8th appeared in my filing cabinet on November 1st, complete with photographs of the crime scene, witness statements, even the suspect's confession. On November 8th, the exact crime occurred at the exact address with the exact stolen items. The officers who responded had no idea I already had their evidence logged and cataloged. I tried to warn them before it happened, called in an anonymous tip about suspicious activity at that address. They checked it out, found nothing, and the burglary happened anyway, exactly as documented in the file that should not have existed. That was when I found the file with my name on it. November 23rd, evidence intake, case number pending, victim name Carter J. surname redacted. Contents listed as personal effects, vehicle keys, cell phone, wallet. Cause of death listed as blunt force trauma, Occurred in evidence room during late shift. Suspect unknown. I stared at that file for 20 minutes, hands numb, trying to understand what I was reading. The date was 5 days away. The evidence room was telling me I was going to die down there, and it was already cataloging what I would leave behind. I called in sick the next 3 days. Stayed home with my doors locked, trying to figure out what to do. Report it to who? Whitmore already knew the room was wrong. Going to the chief would mean explaining things that made me sound insane. On November 22nd, Whitmore called me directly, told me I needed to come in, that there was an issue with the evidence locker that only I could address. His voice sounded wrong, hollow, like he was reading from a script. I did not go in that night. I sat in my apartment watching the clock tick past midnight into November 23rd, waiting to see if I could outlast a prophecy written in a file that should not exist. At 3 in the morning, my phone rang. Whitmore again. He told me they found something in the evidence room, a body sealed in the wall behind the 1989 cases. Construction crew had found it years ago during foundation work. Decided it was easier to just wall it back up than deal with the investigation. Judge Harlan Cross, missing since the courthouse fire in 1952. Apparently, he had been down there the whole time, still organizing his files, even as the building burned above him. Whitmore said they were clearing the evidence room, relocating everything, sealing the basement permanently. He said I did not need to come back. They would mail my final paycheck. I asked him about the file with my name, the one that said I died on November 23rd. There was a long silence on the phone. Then he said sometimes the room gets it wrong. Sometimes it documents possibilities instead of certainties. He said Donovan had a file too, but he survived by leaving when the room told him to leave. The ones who stayed, who tried to prove the room wrong, they became part of what it documented. I moved to a different state in January. Got a job doing data entry, nothing related to law enforcement or records keeping. I have not been in a basement since. But sometimes, I still get mail forwarded from my old address. Case files I never requested, evidence logs I never filed. They are always dated in the future, always documenting crimes that have not happened yet. I burn them without reading the details. Whatever that evidence room was, whatever Judge Cross became down there in the dark, organizing his files for 70 years, it still thinks I work there. It still thinks I need to know how the cases end, even the ones that have not started yet. Especially the ones involving people I know, people I care about, people whose names I recognize from my new life in my new city far away from Monroe County. The files keep coming, and I keep burning them, and I tell myself that is enough to stay free of whatever lives in that basement. But I know better. I have seen what happens to evidence that tries to file itself. Eventually, it ends up exactly where it belongs, whether it wants to or not. I am just waiting to see which file I end up in, and whether it will be dated in the past or the future when they finally seal me in that wall next to Judge Cross. Dispatch sent me to check on an elderly woman who had not been seen in 6 weeks, and I wish to God I had never opened that door. My name is Savannah, and I have been a deputy with the Harrow County Sheriff's Department for 9 years, long enough to know that welfare checks in the mountain communities usually end one of 2 ways. Either the person is fine and annoyed you bothered them, or they have been dead for days and the smell hits you before you even reach the porch. I was not prepared for the third option, the one that does not appear in any training manual or protocol handbook. The call came in on a Thursday afternoon in late September. A woman named Constance Thayer, age 79, had not collected her mail in over a month. Her house sat at the end of Ridgemont Road, a winding dirt path that climbed 3 miles into the Blue Ridge foothills where cell service died. And common sense told most people not to build homes. The postal carrier who filed the concern said her mailbox was overflowing, newspapers piled up on the porch, but he could see lights on inside at night. Figured she might have had a fall, might need medical assistance, but could not reach a phone. I took the call alone. Standard procedure for a welfare check in that area. The department was stretched thin, and sending 2 deputies on what would probably be a false alarm or a retrieval of someone who died peacefully in their sleep felt like a waste of resources. I radioed my location to dispatch at 14:47 hours and started up the mountain road with my windows down, breathing in that pine-thick air that always smelled like rain even when the sky was clear. The Thayer house appeared after the 7th switchback, a small clapboard structure painted yellow decades ago, but faded to the color of old bone. The porch sagged in the middle, and black mold crawled up the north wall like fingers reaching for the roof. 3 rocking chairs sat empty, moving slightly in the wind that came down from the ridge. The mailbox at the road was indeed overflowing, stuffed with catalogs and bills and weekly circulars dating back to August 15th. I documented everything with my body camera, called out as I approached the porch, standard welfare check procedure. Sheriff's Department, Mrs. Thayer. I am here to check on your welfare. Can you hear me? No response. I knocked on the door frame, 3 solid raps that echoed inside the house. Waited 30 seconds. Knocked again. Through the window beside the door, I could see into a living room that looked like it belonged in a museum exhibit about Appalachian life circa 1960. Floral wallpaper, a wood-burning stove, photographs in oval frames covering every surface, and candles, dozens of them, burning on the mantel and the side tables and the windowsills. Fresh candles. Someone had lit them recently. The wax was not melted down to stubs. I tried the door and found it unlocked, which was common in these remote areas where people still believed isolation was better security than any deadbolt. The smell that greeted me was not decomposition like I expected. It was herbs, sage, and something sharper I could not identify, burning in clay bowls placed around the room in a pattern that looked deliberate. Protective, maybe, though I could not have said what it was meant to protect against. Mrs. Thayer, this is Deputy Savannah with the Sheriff's Department. I am coming inside to check on you. The kitchen looked recently used. Fresh bread on the counter, still soft when I pressed it. A kettle on the stove that was warm to the touch. Dishes in the sink with water that had not evaporated yet. Someone had been here within the last few hours, but the house had that hollow feeling that comes from being truly empty, when even the air knows nobody is breathing it. I found her upstairs in the back bedroom. Constance Thayer sat in a wooden chair facing the window that overlooked the ridge. Her hands folded in her lap, her eyes open and staring at something I could not see. She was alive. I could see her chest moving with shallow breaths. But she did not respond when I spoke to her, did not turn her head when I moved into her line of sight, did not blink when I waved my hand in front of her face. I called for medical on the radio, but got only static. Too deep in the mountains, too much rock between me and the repeater tower. I would have to drive her down myself or go back to the road to call for an ambulance. But when I touched her shoulder, tried to help her stand, she finally spoke. Not in English. The words came out in a rhythm that sounded like prayer or chant, syllables that clicked and rolled in a way human mouths do not usually move. Her eyes stayed fixed on the window. I pulled back and tried again, what I hoped was a calming voice. Mrs. Thayer, can you understand me? Do you know where you are? She stopped chanting, turned her head slowly until she was looking directly at me. Her eyes were clear, sharp, completely lucid. When she spoke this time, it was in English, but with an accent I could not place. Too old, too regional, like hearing recorded voices from the 1800s. You should not have come before moonrise. I felt my stomach drop in that instinctive way. Your body knows something is wrong before your brain catches up. I asked her what she meant, told her I was there to help, that people were worried about her. She shook her head, just once, and pointed to the floor. I looked down and saw what I had missed when I first entered the room. Symbols drawn in ash, covering the floorboards in concentric circles around her chair. The same symbols I had seen on fence posts, driving up the mountain, carved into trees, painted on mailboxes in white that glowed faintly in the dim light. "They've been taking care of me," she said. And I knew she did not mean family or neighbors. Bringing food, lighting candles, keeping the wards fresh. But you come too early. Moon has not risen, yet. You cannot leave until it does. I told her I did not understand, that I needed to get her medical attention, that she had been reported missing essentially, and people were concerned. She laughed, and the sound had too many tones in it, like multiple voices laughing at slightly different pitches. "Nobody reported me missing, Deputy. They know exactly where I am. They know exactly what I am doing here. You the only one who does not know, and that is a problem for both of us now." I tried the door. It was locked from the outside somehow, though I had not heard anyone come up the stairs. I tried the window, but it would not open. Sealed shut with something that looked like wax, but was hard as concrete when I tried to chip it away with my fingernail. My radio was dead. Phone showed no signal, and the sun was starting to drop toward the ridge outside. Mrs. Thayer watched me try every exit, every window, every possible way out of that room. When I finally stopped, breathing hard and fighting down panic, she gestured to the chair beside hers. "Might as well sit. We got about 2 hours until moonrise. I will explain what I can, though knowing may not help you any." I sat because standing felt like it was using energy I might need later. She told me she had been born in that house 83 years ago, not 79 like the record said. Her mother had been born there too, and her grandmother before that. All the way back to the first Thayer woman who settled on that ridge in 1823 after walking out of the deep woods with no memory of where she came from and a gift for knowing things before they happened. The Thayer women kept something contained on that mountain, something that lived in the old places, the caves and hollows where the land remembered what it was before humans came and tried to tame it. Every generation, one woman stayed in the house and performed the rituals that kept it sleeping, kept it from wandering down into the valleys where people lived in numbers large enough to draw its attention. It required maintenance, monthly ceremonies on specific lunar phases, offerings left at certain locations, words spoken in the old language that predated English and Cherokee both. Mrs. Thayer had no daughters, no granddaughters. She was the last of her line, and when she died, there would be nobody to perform the rituals, nobody to keep the wards fresh and the candles burning in the proper patterns. She had accepted this years ago, made her peace with being the last guardian of something the world had forgotten about. But the thing in the mountain had not forgotten about her, and it knew when the ritual started to fail, when the wards weakened, when the last Thayer woman began to run out of time. "So they come help me," she said, gesturing vaguely toward the window. "The people in the valley. They learned from their grandparents, who learned from theirs. When I got too old to walk to the sacred sites, they walked for me. When I could not remember all the words, they spoke them with me. They've been keeping me alive and keeping it contained. but they can only do so much. Eventually, it will need a new guardian, someone strong enough to hold it, someone with the gift of knowing. She looked at me then with something that might have been pity or might have been satisfaction. I asked her what that had to do with me, why I could not leave until moonrise. She pointed to my hands. I looked down and saw symbols drawn on my palms in ash, appearing as I watched, forming themselves from nothing. It has been calling you for years, Deputy Savannah. Every time you drove past this mountain, every time you felt eyes on you in the woods, every time you knew something bad was going to happen before it did and could not explain how you knew. You got the gift, same as the Thayer women. And now you here, at the right time, in the right place, marked by the old one who needs a new keeper. I tried to wipe the ash off my hands, but it had already soaked into my skin, part of me now in a way that made my throat close with fear. I told her this was insane, that I was leaving, that I would break the window if I had to. She did not try to stop me, just watched as I picked up the chair and swung it at the glass. The chair shattered. The window did not crack. The sun touched the ridge outside, painting everything orange and red. Mrs. Thayer stood slowly, joints cracking, and walked to the window. I could see movement in the trees now, people climbing the path to the house. The neighbors she mentioned, the ones who had been helping her maintain the rituals. 10 of them, maybe 12, carrying candles and bowls and bundles of herbs. They entered the house without knocking, their footsteps on the stairs perfectly synchronized. They came into the room and formed a circle around Mrs. Thayer and me. I recognized some of them from my patrols, the man who ran the general store in Ridgemont, the woman who taught at the elementary school, the mechanic who fixed my patrol car last winter. They looked at me with eyes that held no surprise, as if they had been expecting me, as if this had all been arranged long before I received that welfare check call. Mrs. Thayer began to chant in that clicking, rolling language. The others joined her, and the symbols on the floor started to glow with light that did not come from the candles. I felt something shift in the room, in the air, in my own chest, where my heart should have been beating, but instead felt like it was being held gently in hands I could not see. The moon rose outside, full and white and too large for the sky. The symbols on my palms burned without heat. Mrs. Thayer collapsed slowly to the floor, her breathing shallow, her purpose fulfilled. The others continued chanting, and I understood now why I could not leave, why the door had locked, why the symbols had chosen my skin. I am Deputy Savannah. I have been with the Harrow County Sheriff's Department for 9 years. I live in the Thayer house now. I perform the rituals on the correct lunar phases. I speak the words in the old language that I somehow know without having learned them. The people from the valley bring me food and light candles and help maintain the wards when my hands shake too much to draw the symbols correctly. I filed my resignation from the department, citing personal reasons. My captain did not question it, did not ask why I was moving to a remote mountain house with no cell service and roads that become impassable in winter. He just nodded and said he understood, and I knew he was one of them. One of the people who had always known what lived on that mountain and what was required to keep it contained. I wait now for the next deputy to respond to a welfare check. I wait for the next woman with a gift to drive past and feel eyes on her in the woods. I wait for the moonrise each month and perform the ceremonies that keep something old and hungry from wandering down into the valleys. And I understand now why Mrs. Thayer looked at me with pity. Because knowing what you are guarding is easier than knowing you will guard it until the day you cannot stand anymore. And then you will sit in that chair facing the window and wait for someone else to receive the call that will bring them here exactly when they need to arrive, whether they want to or not. The dash cam footage from my patrol car shows things that did not happen, and I need someone to believe me before it is too late. My name is Tyler, and I have been with the Westbrook Police Department for 6 years. I drive Patrol Unit 43, a 2019 Ford Explorer with 67,000 miles on it, and a dashboard camera that records every shift in high definition, date-stamped, GPS-tagged, admissible in court. The footage is supposed to protect me from false accusations, document incidents, provide evidence when my word alone is not enough. Instead, it has become proof that I am doing things I have no memory of doing, and nobody can explain how that is possible. It started on March the 14th. I pulled over a silver Honda Accord for running a stop sign at the intersection of Maple and 7th. Routine traffic stop, requested license and registration, issued a warning, sent the driver on his way. I documented it in my activity log at 14 to 23 hours. When I returned to the station that evening and uploaded my dash cam footage for archiving, the stop was there exactly as I remembered it. Except in the video, after I returned the driver's license, I walked to the passenger side of his vehicle and searched the glove compartment without consent or probable cause. I watched myself do this on the recording, saw my own hands rifling through papers, saw the driver's face tense with anxiety, heard my own voice telling him to stay calm while I conducted what was clearly an illegal search. I had no memory of any of that. None. My recollection ended with handing back the license and watching the Honda drive away. But the video did not lie. The timestamp matched my log entry. The GPS coordinates confirmed the location. The video was continuous, unedited, with no breaks or glitches that would suggest tampering. Internal Affairs reviewed it during their routine audit and called me in for questioning 3 days later. Lieutenant Brooks sat across from me in the interview room with his laptop open, showing the footage on a loop. He asked me to explain the search. I told him I did not perform any search, that I had no memory of approaching the passenger side of the vehicle. He rewound the video and played it again. There I was, clear as day, opening the glove compartment, searching through registration papers and a vehicle manual, closing it, walking back to my patrol car. Brooks pointed out that the driver did not file a complaint, that technically no violation was documented. But he wanted to understand why I would conduct a search without cause and then fail to report it. I could not answer him because I genuinely did not know. He sent me home with a written warning and instructions to schedule an appointment with the department psychologist. Possible stress, he said. Possible dissociative episodes. Possible early signs of neurological issues that needed evaluation before I could return to active duty. I went home and watched the video 50 more times on my personal laptop after requesting a copy of the file. Every detail was exactly as I remembered right up until the moment I walked to the passenger side. Then it was like watching a stranger wearing my uniform, moving with my gait, using my voice. The person in that video knew what he was doing, moved with purpose and confidence. But it was not me. I was certain of that, even though the evidence said otherwise. The second incident happened 4 days later during my first shift back after the psychological evaluation that found nothing wrong with me. I responded to a noise complaint at an apartment complex on the east side. Spoke with the tenant who reported loud music from the unit above. Went upstairs, knocked on the door, had a brief conversation with the resident who agreed to turn down the volume. Simple call, in and out in 12 minutes, documented in my log at 22:47 hours. The dashcam told a different story. In the footage, I arrived at the complex, went upstairs, and returned to my vehicle 17 minutes later, carrying a small black bag that I placed in my trunk. The video showed me looking around before closing the trunk, then sitting in the driver's seat and updating my log as if nothing unusual had happened. When I checked my trunk the next day, I found a bag I had never seen before containing $300 in cash and a baggie of white powder that field tested positive for cocaine. I reported it immediately to Lieutenant Brooks, told him I had no idea how it got there, that I did not take anything from that apartment, that someone must have planted it. He watched the video with me in his office. The footage was clear, unambiguous. I exited the apartment building carrying the bag. Nobody else was visible. No cuts in the video. No indication of tampering. He placed me on administrative leave pending a full investigation and confiscated my service weapon. The investigation found that the resident of that apartment had reported items missing after my visit. Cash and drugs, specifically. He filed a formal complaint stating that an officer had searched his apartment without a warrant and stolen property. His description of the officer matched me exactly. The dash cam footage supported his account. I was looking at termination and criminal charges for theft and evidence tampering. I hired a lawyer who specialized in digital forensics. She examined the video files from both incidents and found nothing wrong with them. No manipulation, no deepfake signatures, no evidence of editing. The metadata was clean. The timestamps were consistent. The GPS data matched my patrol route exactly. She told me the footage was authentic and suggested I consider a plea deal because no jury would believe my version of events when confronted with video evidence this clear. I refused. I knew I did not do those things, regardless of what the camera showed. I started researching similar cases, spent hours searching through forums and databases for other officers who reported discrepancies between their memories and their dash cam footage. I found 3 cases in other departments over the past 2 years. An officer in Ohio who claimed his dash cam showed him planting evidence during a traffic stop. An officer in Nevada whose body camera recorded him using excessive force during an arrest he remembered as peaceful. An officer in Maine who watched himself on video conducting unauthorized surveillance of a residence he had never visited. All 3 officers were terminated. All 3 maintained their innocence. All 3 had clean records before the video evidence surfaced. And all 3 had reported one additional detail that made my hands go numb when I read it. They claimed to have seen themselves in real time, doing things they were not doing, as if they existed in 2 places simultaneously. I started watching my dash cam feed in real time instead of just reviewing it later. Set up my laptop in the passenger seat with a live connection to the camera system, splitting the screen so I could see both the dash cam view and my actual surroundings. During my first patrol after setting this up, I noticed something that stopped my heart. At 15:34 hours, the dash cam showed me pulling over a blue Toyota Camry on Riverside Drive. The live feed showed me conducting the stop, approaching the window, speaking with the driver. But I was not on Riverside Drive. I was sitting in the parking lot of a gas station on Elm Street, watching this happen on my laptop screen while simultaneously knowing I was not doing it. The dash cam showed me writing a citation. The driver signed it. I returned to my patrol car and marked the stop as complete in my log. Except I never moved from the gas station parking lot. I checked my physical citation book and found a completed citation for that exact stop, signed by a driver I had never met, documenting a violation I never witnessed. My handwriting, my signature on the form. I called Lieutenant Brooks immediately and told him what happened. He thought I was having a breakdown, told me to return to the station and surrender my patrol car. I refused and continued monitoring the dash cam. Over the next hour, it showed me responding to 3 different calls while I sat motionless in that parking lot. A domestic disturbance on Oak Street, a shoplifting report at a convenience store, a welfare check on an elderly man, who had not answered his phone in 2 days. The dash cam documented every interaction in perfect detail. I watched myself doing my job correctly and professionally while sitting in my patrol car doing nothing at all. By 17 hours, I could see other officers responding to calls in areas where my dash cam showed me also responding. The GPS data from my vehicle showed I was at those locations, even though I was not. Dispatch started calling me, asking why I was not responding on the radio, while my dash cam audio recorded me responding clearly to every call. The system showed me in 4 different locations simultaneously. Lieutenant Brooks sent 2 units to find me. They pulled into the gas station parking lot where I was actually sitting, but the dash cam footage showed an empty parking lot. On their body cameras, they walked past my patrol car without seeing it, without seeing me, as if I was not there at all. I watched this happen in real time on my laptop screen. Watched them search for me in a location where I was clearly visible, but somehow invisible to them. I drove to the station and demanded to see Brooks. He watched my dash cam footage from that shift and told me I had responded to 7 calls successfully. Showed me the documentation, the completed reports, the evidence I had collected from a burglary scene I never visited. My activity log was full. My GPS tracking showed normal patrol patterns. Everything looked exactly as it should, except I knew I'd been sitting in that parking lot for over 2 hours doing nothing. That was when I realized the truth. I was not doing those things. Something else was. Something that looked like me, moved like me, used my voice and my mannerisms perfectly. And the dash cam was documenting this other version of me while I sat helpless, watching it take over my job, my life, my identity. The footage showed what I should have been doing, what I was supposed to be doing, and whatever was creating this footage was making it real after the fact. I am writing this from my apartment while my patrol car sits in my driveway with the dash cam still recording. I can see the feed on my laptop. Right now, at 23:47 hours, the dash cam shows me in my patrol car driving down Lincoln Avenue responding to a domestic disturbance call. But I am here, in my living room, watching myself do this. My phone is ringing with dispatch asking why I am not responding on the radio. My GPS tracker shows me at the scene of the call. In 15 minutes, there will be a report filed under my name documenting what I said and did at that residence. I have never been to that address. I am not in my patrol car. But tomorrow morning, the dash cam footage will show that I was, and nobody will believe me when I say I was home the entire time. Eventually, the version of me in the dash cam footage will do something I cannot defend, something I cannot explain, and I will be held responsible for actions I did not take, but cannot prove I did not take, because the video evidence is perfect and unassailable. I am watching myself on the dash cam right now walking up to a front door. I am watching myself knock and identify myself as Officer Tyler with the Westbrook Police Department. I am watching myself enter the residence, and I have no idea what I'm about to do inside. I solved 37 missing persons cases in 2 years, and every single one of them should have remained unsolved. My name is Brooklyn, and I spent 3 years as a detective with the Metropolitan Police Department's Missing Persons Unit before I understood what we were actually doing in that office on the 4th floor of the downtown precinct. They called us the best unit in the state, boasted about our solve rate during budget meetings and press conferences, used our statistics to justify funding and promotions. Nobody asked how we managed to close cases that other departments could not crack, cases that had gone cold years before we even opened the files. Nobody wanted to know the answer because the numbers looked good and the families got closure and the department got accolades. I know now that ignorance was a choice we all made, and I am paying for that choice every single day. I transferred to missing persons in January 2022 after 4 years working robbery. My captain recommended me for the position, said I had the right instincts, the kind of analytical mind that could see patterns others missed. The unit consisted of 6 detectives, all senior officers with decades of experience. Detective Blake ran the unit, 53 years old with gray hair and reading glasses he wore on a chain around his neck. He welcomed me on my first day with a firm handshake and a folder containing my first case. A 17-year-old girl named Michelle Harper, who disappeared from a shopping mall 3 weeks earlier. I spent 2 days reviewing the file, conducting interviews, following up on leads that had gone nowhere. Standard investigation work that felt familiar despite the new specialty. On my 3rd day, Blake called me into his office and asked how the case was progressing. I told him honestly that I had nothing new, that every lead had dead-ended, that without additional evidence or witnesses, I was looking at a cold case. He nodded and pulled out another file from his desk drawer. This one thicker, older, with a different case number, but the same girl's photograph clipped to the front. He explained that we kept 2 sets of files in missing persons, the official files that matched what was logged in the system, and the research files that contained information we gathered before cases were officially opened. I did not understand what he meant until he opened the research file, and I saw surveillance photographs dated 2 months before Michelle Harper was reported missing. Photos of her leaving her house, walking to school, meeting friends at the mall. Detailed logs of her movements, her routine, her relationships. Information that should not have existed unless someone had been watching her before she disappeared. Blake saw my expression and closed the file. He told me to take a walk with him, led me to the evidence room where he unlocked a cabinet that was not listed in any inventory. Inside were dozens of research files, each one containing pre-investigation surveillance on people who were not yet reported missing. Some of the files dated back 5 years. Some contained photographs taken the week before. All of them documented vulnerable people, individuals with troubled home lives, addiction issues, mental health problems, people whose disappearances would be investigated but might never be solved without extraordinary effort. He explained the system to me in a voice that sounded rehearsed, like he had given this speech before to other new detectives. The unit identified potential missing persons cases before they happened by monitoring high-risk individuals. When someone from our watch list disappeared, we already had weeks or months of investigative groundwork completed. We knew their patterns, their associates, their last known locations. We could close cases in days that would take other units months or years because we had a head start that nobody else knew about. I asked him how this was legal, how we justified surveillance without warrants or probable cause. He told me it was not about legality, it was about results. The families did not care how we found their missing loved ones. They only cared that we found them. The department did not care about our methods as long as our statistics looked good. And the people we watched never knew they were being watched. So they could not complain about violations of privacy that occurred before they were even victims. I should have walked out. Should have reported what I learned to internal affairs or the district attorney or anyone who would listen. But Blake showed me the solve rate statistics, showed me the families we had reunited, the closure we had provided to parents and spouses and children who thought their loved ones were gone forever. He told me I could be part of something that actually helped people, or I could be another detective who filed reports and closed cases as unsolved and moved on to the next file without making a difference. I stayed. I told myself the surveillance was borderline ethical if it led to solving real cases, saving real lives. I took the research file on Michelle Harper and used it to trace her last movements, identified the man she'd been communicating with online, located her 3 states away, living with him voluntarily. I closed the case in 4 days. My captain praised my work. Michelle's family thanked me with tears in their eyes. And Blake added another file to my desk, this one containing surveillance on a 42-year-old man with schizophrenia who had stopped taking his medication. Over the next 18 months, I closed case after case using research files that should not have existed. I found missing children, located runaway teenagers, tracked down adults who had vanished without explanation. My solve rate was exceptional. I received commendations and a promotion to senior detective. But I started noticing things that did not make sense. Inconsistencies in the research files that suggested we were not just watching people who might go missing. We were watching people who would go missing, as if the disappearances were guaranteed events we were waiting to document. I found a research file on a woman who disappeared in March 2023. The surveillance photos were dated from January through February, showing her daily routine in meticulous detail. But mixed in with the surveillance photos were images that looked staged. Photos of her getting into a specific vehicle. Photos of her at locations she never visited, according to her friends and family. When I traced the vehicle in those photos, it belonged to a man who worked as a security contractor. Someone with no connection to the victim that I could find in any database or interview. I showed the discrepancies to Blake and asked him to explain. He closed his office door and told me the truth I should have realized months earlier. We did not just predict missing persons cases, we selected them. The unit worked with a network of contractors who identified vulnerable individuals, documented their routines, and when the time was right, made them disappear in ways that looked natural or voluntary. Then we solved the cases using our pre-existing surveillance, which made the department look effective and kept funding flowing to the unit. Some of the missing persons were found alive because they were supposed to be found alive. Runaways, people fleeing debt or relationships, individuals who wanted to disappear, and we helped facilitate that while taking credit for locating them later. Others were not meant to be found. They became permanent disappearances that we eventually closed as cold cases after conducting investigations we knew would lead nowhere because we had designed them to fail. Blake explained this like he was describing a filing system, casual and matter-of-fact. He said the unit had operated this way for 12 years under 4 different captains who all understood and approved the arrangement. The solve rate justified the methods. The funding kept the department running. The contractors were paid from seized asset funds that never appeared in official budgets. Everyone benefited except the people we selected for disappearance. And they were chosen specifically because nobody would fight too hard to find them. I asked him how many people had been disappeared versus found. He told me the ratio was about 60-40, with most of the disappeared cases being individuals involved in criminal activities, witnesses who needed to be silenced, or people who simply fit the profile of someone nobody would miss. He said it like he was discussing traffic statistics, emotionless and procedural. I found my own research file the next day while he was out of the office. It was in the locked cabinet with surveillance photos dating back 3 months before I even applied for the transfer to missing persons. They had been watching me, documenting my routine, logging my movements. My file was marked with a yellow tab that indicated selection status pending. There was a notation at the bottom in Blake's handwriting stating that my analytical skills were valuable, but my curiosity was becoming problematic, and a decision needed to be made about my long-term viability in the unit. I photographed every page of my file and several others, stored them on a thumb drive, and started planning my exit strategy. But Blake was smarter than I gave him credit for. He knew I had accessed the cabinet, probably had alerts set up for when files were opened without authorization. That evening, he called me into his office with 2 other senior detectives and the unit supervisor. They offered me a choice. I could accept a promotion to unit coordinator, which would give me oversight of the selection process and a substantial raise. Or I could become one of our cases. They showed me a research file already prepared. Surveillance photos of my apartment, my gym, my regular coffee shop. They had documented everything they needed to make me disappear in a way that would look like I had chosen to leave. Maybe caught up in a relationship gone wrong or burned out from the job. They could close my case in a week and nobody would question it because the missing persons unit was too good at their job to let anything slip through. I took the promotion. I told myself it was survival, that I could find a way to expose them once I understood the full scope of the operation. But the truth is, I was afraid and I was complicit, and I did not know who to trust in a department that had allowed this to continue for over a decade. I coordinated selections for 8 months, identified vulnerable people who fit our profiles, approved surveillance operations, and maintained the research files that made us look like exceptional investigators instead of the predators we actually were. I left the department last year with a commendation and a pension. I told everyone I was moving to be closer to family. I live in a different state now, under a name I changed legally through a lawyer who did not ask questions. But I still monitor missing persons reports from my old jurisdiction, still recognize faces from the research files I helped create, still know which cases will be solved quickly and which ones will never close because we designed them that way. I see my neighbors here in this new place, and sometimes I catch myself documenting their routines, noting their vulnerabilities, thinking about who would be selected if this were my old territory. The instinct does not go away just because I am no longer actively participating. And I know Blake still has my file, still has those surveillance photos, still knows where I am and what I'm doing because people like him always keep insurance on former members of the unit. I'm waiting for the day I see a car that does not belong in my neighborhood, or find a research file with my current address, or simply disappear the way I helped make so many others disappear. The only question is whether they will let me be found or if I will become one of the cold cases we never intended to solve. I went into interrogation room C at 4 in the afternoon and came out 3 weeks later, even though the clock said only 20 minutes had passed. My name is Piper, and I have been a patrol officer with the Riverside Police Department for 7 years. I conduct interviews when necessary, take witness statements, assist detectives with suspect questioning when they need an extra officer present for safety. Routine police work that should not involve temporal anomalies or experiencing time in ways that violate every law of physics I learned in high school. But Interrogation Room C does not care about physics or logic or the fundamental structure of reality. It operates according to rules nobody understands, and I am one of the few people who experienced those rules directly and lived to document what happened. The call came in on October 9th regarding a shoplifting incident at a pharmacy on Westbrook Avenue. The suspect, a man named Jaden who appeared to be in his mid-20s, was cooperative and agreed to come to the station voluntarily to provide a statement. Standard procedure for a minor theft. We could have handled it with a citation, but he wanted to explain his side, claimed there was a misunderstanding about whether he intended to pay for the items. I transported him to the station, processed his information, and walked him to Interrogation Room C at 16:14 hours, according to the logbook I signed. The room looked exactly like every other interrogation room in the building. Gray walls, metal table bolted to the floor, 2 chairs, a mirror on one wall that allowed observation from the adjacent room, a camera mounted in the corner for recording. The fluorescent lights hummed at a frequency that always gave me a headache if I stayed too long. I had conducted dozens of interviews in that room without incident. Nothing about it seemed unusual or wrong. I sat down across from Jaden and began with the standard opening. Advised him he was not under arrest, that he was free to leave at any time, that anything he said could be used in court if charges were filed. He nodded understanding and folded his hands on the table. I asked him to describe what happened at the pharmacy. He opened his mouth to answer, and the lights flickered once. When they stabilized, something felt different about the room, something I could not immediately identify. I looked at my watch. 17 hours. 3 minutes had passed, which felt right. Jaden was staring at me with an expression I had not seen a moment before, something like recognition mixed with resignation. I asked him again to describe the incident. He shook his head slowly and said, "You always start with that question, every single time. And I always tell you I have been in this room for months." I told him that was impossible, that we had just sat down moments ago. He pointed to the wall beside the door. I turned and saw scratch marks carved into the paint. Thin lines grouped in sets of 5. The universal prison counting method. Hundreds of marks covering the wall from floor to ceiling. I stood up and examined them, ran my fingers over grooves that felt real, that had depth and texture. They had not been there when we entered the room. I was certain of that. I tried the door handle. It turned, but the door would not open, as if something on the other side was holding it closed. I knocked hard, called out to the officers I knew were working the hallway outside. No response. The observation window showed an empty room on the other side, which was wrong because someone should have been monitoring the interview. I pulled out my radio and keyed the mic. Static. My cell phone showed no signal and a time that read 16:17, frozen on those numbers even as I watched the seconds refuse to advance. Jaden sat quietly at the table, watching me with tired eyes. When I turned back to him, he gestured at the chair and said I might as well sit because there was nothing I could do to leave until the room decided to release me. His voice sounded older than it should have, worn down by something I did not yet understand. I demanded to know what he meant. He told me he had been brought to Interrogation Room C 4 months ago for questioning about a different shoplifting incident. The officer who interviewed him asked the same opening questions, advised him of his rights, requested a statement. Then the lights flickered and everything changed. The officer did not remember entering the room, started the interview over from the beginning. When the officer tried to leave, the door would not open. They spent what felt like weeks in that room together before the officer eventually disappeared during one of the interview resets, and Jaden found himself alone. He said other officers had come and gone since then, each one experiencing the same cycle. They would enter, conduct an interview, the lights would flicker, and time would reset for them, but not for him. He watched them repeat the same questions, give the same advisements, exhibit the same confusion when they realized the room was not functioning normally. Some stayed for hours before vanishing during a reset. Others stayed for days. He had been keeping count of the resets by carving marks on the wall, estimating that each mark represented roughly 1 day of subjective time experienced in the room. I looked at the camera in the corner. The red recording light was on, but the lens was pointed at an angle that should have been impossible given how it was mounted. I could see my own reflection in the camera lens, except the reflection showed me sitting at the table weeks from now, my uniform disheveled, my face exhausted. I looked away quickly and felt my stomach turn over. The clock on the wall read 16:17. My watch read 16:17, but I could feel time passing in a way that did not match those frozen numbers. My heart beat 60 times per minute, my breathing followed normal patterns, but the externals, markers of time, refused to advance. Jaden said this was how it always started. The realization that you were trapped in a moment, that was stretching infinitely without ever moving forward. I asked him what happened to the other officers who had been in the room. He said they disappeared when the interviews reset, but he had started finding evidence that they were still there somewhere. Personal items appearing on the table that had not been there before. Voices coming through the walls, speaking in conversations he could not quite hear. Shadows under the door that moved when nobody should have been in the hallway. He believed the room was experiencing every interrogation that had ever occurred in it simultaneously. That all the questions and answers and confessions and lies were happening at once in a space that existed outside normal time. Sometimes he could hear fragments of other interviews overlapping with ours. Suspects from different cases answering questions asked by officers he never saw. He said if I listened carefully, I would hear it too. I listened. At first, there was only the hum of the fluorescent lights and our breathing. Then I started to hear voices, faint and distant, echoing through the walls like they were traveling from very far away. A detective questioning a murder suspect. A sergeant interviewing a witness to an assault. A rookie officer taking a statement from someone who sounded terrified. All of them existing in the same space, separated by something thinner than walls, speaking over and across each other in a cacophony that should not have been possible. The lights flickered again. When they stabilized, I was sitting at the table across from Jaden, and I was advising him of his rights, asking him to describe what happened at the pharmacy. But I had already done this. I remembered doing this. I stopped mid-sentence and looked at my watch. 16:17, the same frozen time. But I felt like hours had passed since I first sat down. Jaden just nodded and said, "See, it resets. And each time it resets, you forget a little more. Eventually, you will not remember entering the room at all. You will just exist here in an eternal interview loop, asking the same questions forever while time accumulates around you." I stood up again and examined the wall more carefully. Among the scratch marks, I found names carved into the paint. Officer names I recognized from department rosters, some recent, some dating back years. People who had been reported as taking leave or transferring to other departments or simply quitting without explanation. They had all been in this room, and they had all left marks to prove they existed before the room erased them from everyone's memory. I carved my own name into the wall below the others, used my handcuff key to scrape the letters deep into the paint, marking that Officer Piper had been here, had been trapped in this place that operated outside normal time. If I was going to disappear like the others, I wanted proof that I existed, that I did not just quit or transfer or vanish without cause. The lights flickered. I was sitting at the table. Jaden was across from me. I started to advise him of his rights, but stopped when I saw my name carved into the wall, saw the fresh scratches that I had just made even though I did not remember making them. The clock read 16:17. My watch read 16:17. But I felt exhausted in a way that suggested days without sleep. This cycle repeated, over and over. Each reset I remembered less of the previous iterations, but the wall kept accumulating evidence. More names, more scratch marks, messages I wrote to myself documenting what was happening, warnings to trust the physical evidence even when memory failed. Jaden said he had watched me go through 47 resets, that I had been in the room for what he estimated was 3 weeks subjective time, even though the clocks never moved past 16:17. Then the door opened, just opened normally as if it had never been stuck. A sergeant stood in the hallway looking impatient and asked why I was still conducting an interview with a shoplifting suspect 40 minutes after bringing him in. I looked at the wall. The scratch marks were gone. The names were gone. The paint was clean and unmarked. Jaden looked at me with eyes that held no recognition, no memory of the weeks we spent trapped together in temporal suspension. I checked my watch. 16:54 hours. 37 minutes had passed according to the log, exactly matching the timestamps on the interview recording. But I felt those 3 weeks in my bones, in the exhaustion that made my hands shake, in the memories that faded even as I tried to hold on to them. I processed Jaden's citation and released him. He walked out without looking back, just another shoplifting suspect in a routine day. I went home and slept for 14 hours. When I returned to the station, I checked the interview recording from Room C. The video showed a normal interrogation, 23 minutes long, no anomalies or glitches or flickering lights. Just me asking questions and Jaden answering them in a completely mundane exchange about whether he intended to steal medication or genuinely forgot to pay. But sometimes I lose time in ways I cannot explain. I will be driving patrol and look at the clock expecting minutes to have passed, only to find hours are gone with no memory of where I was or what I did. I experience conversations I do not remember having with people who insist we spoke for extended periods. And twice now, I have walked past Interrogation Room C and seen through the observation window another version of myself sitting at that table across from Jaden, conducting an interview that I am not actually conducting. Trapped in a reset I have not yet experienced, or perhaps trapped in one I never fully escaped. The room is still there on the second floor. They still use it for interviews. I have tried to warn other officers, but they just see a normal interrogation room and think I am experiencing stress or burnout. Maybe I am. Maybe those 3 weeks were a delusion brought on by exhaustion or a medical condition nobody has diagnosed yet. But I carved my name in that wall, and even though the paint showed no marks when I checked later, I know what I experienced was real. And I am waiting for the next time the lights flicker, for the next reset that pulls me back into that room where time accumulates without passing and interviews repeat forever in a space that exists between seconds where all the questions ever asked echo across dimensions too thin to see but too real to escape. I have pulled over the same car 73 times, and Aurora always knows exactly what I'm going to say. My name is Colton, and I work as a state trooper on Highway 41, a stretch of road that runs through empty farmland and forest for 87 miles without a single town large enough to have its own police department. Most of my shifts involve monitoring speed, responding to occasional accidents, and dealing with the profound boredom that comes from watching the same landscape pass by hour after hour. At least, that was my experience until 3 months ago when I pulled over a silver Nissan Altima doing 78 in a 65 zone and triggered something I still do not understand and cannot escape. The first stop happened on August 7th at 22:43 hours. Standard procedure. I activated my lights, the vehicle pulled over immediately, no evasion or delay. The driver was a woman who appeared to be in her early 30s, with dark hair and a calm expression that seemed unusual for someone being stopped by state police at night on an isolated highway. She had her license and registration ready before I reached the window. Handed them to me through the opening, she rolled down exactly 4 inches. Her name was Aurora Shaw, according to the license. No warrants, no priors, clean driving record. I asked if she knew why I stopped her. She said speeding, which was correct. I asked where she was heading at this hour. She said north, visiting family. Nothing unusual about the response. I should have written the citation and sent her on her way. But something about the interaction felt scripted, like we were both reading from a play neither of us had auditioned for. When I asked if she had anything illegal in the vehicle, she said, "You always ask about the trunk." I had not asked about the trunk. had not mentioned it at all. But she said it like I had already spoken those words, like this conversation had happened before, and she was responding to questions I had not yet asked. I told her I did not ask about the trunk, and she just smiled and said, "You will." The conversation continued with this strange sense of déjà vu that had no reasonable explanation. Everything I planned to say, she anticipated by seconds. When I asked if I could search the vehicle, she said yes before the question was fully formed. When I walked to the trunk and requested she open it, she was already pressing the release button. The trunk contained nothing illegal or suspicious. Just a suitcase, a road atlas, and a blanket. I issued her a warning and watched her drive away north on Highway 41 until her taillights disappeared into the darkness. The second stop happened 2 nights later. Same stretch of highway, same time, 22.43 hours exactly. Silver Nissan Altima doing 78 in a 65. I recognized the plate number before I even activated my lights. When I approached the window, Aurora had her license and registration ready, handed them. Through the opening, she rolled down exactly 4 inches. Everything identical to the first stop, every word, every gesture. When I asked if she knew why I stopped her, she said speeding, and then added, "And you are going to ask about the trunk again, even though you already know there is nothing there." I tried to change the script, asked her different questions, took a different approach to the conversation. But she responded to the questions I would have asked in the original stop, not the ones I was actually asking, like she was experiencing a different version of the encounter than I was. The trunk search yielded the same results. Same suitcase, same atlas, same blanket. I issued another warning and watched her drive north again until her taillights vanished. After the 5th identical stop, I started documenting everything in detail. Times, dates, exact conversations, weather conditions, everything that might help me understand what was happening. Each stop occurred on my regular patrol shift at 22:43 hours on the same quarter-mile stretch of Highway 41. Aurora's vehicle was always doing 78 in a 65. She always had her documents ready, always rolled the window exactly 4 inches, always anticipated my questions about the trunk. I tried not stopping her, watched her pass my position doing 78 and let her go without activating my lights. But my patrol log showed I had conducted a traffic stop at 22:43 hours anyway, documented the encounter, issued a warning. The paperwork existed in my citation book in my own handwriting, even though I never wrote it. My dash cam footage showed the stop happening, showed me approaching the vehicle and conducting the search. But I had no memory of doing any of it, because I had deliberately stayed in my patrol car and watched her drive past. I requested the dispatch recordings for those nights. They showed me calling in the traffic stop, running the plate number, clearing the scene. My voice on the recordings describing actions I did not remember taking. Other troopers started mentioning seeing me conduct the same stop multiple times, asked why I kept pulling over the same vehicle in the same location. I told them I did not know why, which was the truth. But they assumed I was running some kind of investigation and stopped asking questions. On the 27th stop, I decided to change the outcome. Instead of searching the trunk and finding nothing, I would refuse to search it. Just issue the citation and end the encounter differently. Maybe breaking the pattern would break whatever was causing this loop. When Aurora pulled over and I approached, she said before I could speak, "You are going to try something different tonight, but it will not work. The trunk has to be searched. That is when it happens." I asked her what happens in the trunk. She looked at me with an expression I had not seen in any of the previous stops, something like sadness mixed with resignation. She said, "In about 15 minutes, I die in a collision 3 miles north of here. The car leaves the road, hits a tree, I am killed instantly. You find me during your next patrol sweep. That happened 2 months ago on the night you actually stopped me for speeding. But something broke when I died. Time folded back on itself. Now we are stuck in the minutes before it happens, repeating this stop over and over, because the universe is trying to prevent what comes next. I told her that was impossible, that she was sitting in front of me alive and speaking. She shook her head and said I was not talking to her. I was talking to an echo, a recording of the last conversation she had before the collision. The real Aurora died on August 7th at 22:58 hours, 3 miles north of this location, after I released her from the traffic stop. My patrol log from that night confirmed it. Buried in the documentation I had not reviewed carefully, because I was focused on the repeated stops rather than what came after. I pulled up the incident report on my mobile computer. There it was, filed by me at 23:14 hours on August 7th. Single vehicle fatal collision, silver Nissan Altima. Driver identified as Aurora Shaw, deceased at scene. No other vehicles involved. Cause determined to be driver error combined with road conditions. I had responded to that call, had documented the scene, had watched them remove her body from the wreckage. But if she died that night, how was I pulling her over repeatedly afterward? Aurora, or whatever was speaking through her echo, explained that the stops were not happening after her death. They were happening instead of her death. Every time I pulled her over, time reset to 22:43 and gave her another chance to survive past 22:58. But she could not survive because the collision was inevitable, coded into whatever was causing the loop. The best she could do was delay it by seconds, stretch out the final 15 minutes of her life across infinite repetitions. She said I could try to stop her from leaving, arrest her on false charges, disable her vehicle. Anything to prevent her from driving north into that collision. But every attempt would fail because the loop required her to leave, required the encounter to end with her driving away, required the collision to approach even if it never quite arrived. I tried anyway. Told her I was detaining her for further investigation, called for backup, insisted she step out of the vehicle. She complied calmly, stood beside her car while I searched it more thoroughly. Found nothing because there was nothing to find. My backup never arrived, even though dispatch confirmed units were en route. After 30 minutes of stalling, Aurora simply got back in her car and drove away. My patrol log showed I had released her at 22:51, which was impossible because I had been detaining her until 23:13. But the documentation did not lie, and when I tried to follow her north, my vehicle would not start until 23:15, long after she should have reached the collision site. I drove to the location expecting to find wreckage. The road was empty. No skid marks, no broken tree, no evidence of any collision. I returned to my patrol route, confused and exhausted. The next shift, I pulled her over again at 22:43 hours. Same conversation, same trunk search, same inevitable drive north toward a death that kept approaching but never arriving. I am writing this during my 73rd identical traffic stop. Aurora is sitting in her vehicle waiting for me to complete the trunk search so she can drive north. She knows I will find nothing. She knows I will issue a warning. She knows she will drive away and die at 22:58, 3 miles from here. And she knows tomorrow I will pull her over again at 22:43, and we will repeat this encounter exactly as we have 72 times before. I asked her on the 50th stop if she wanted me to find a way to break the loop. She said no. The loop was better than the alternative. In the loop, she got to live those 15 minutes over and over, got to experience being alive, even if it was the same brief experience repeated infinitely. Breaking the loop meant accepting her death, letting time move forward past 2258 into a future where she did not exist. She preferred the repetition. I think I understand now why I keep pulling her over even when I try not to. Some part of me knows what comes at 2258, knows that if I do not conduct this stop, then time moves forward and I have to document her death again, have to notify her family again, have to process a fatal collision scene that I have already processed. The loop protects me too, keeps me in a moment where she is still alive and I am still just conducting a routine traffic stop. But sometimes I wonder if I am the one who died on August 7th. If maybe I had a heart attack or a collision of my own during my patrol. And this loop is my mind's way of avoiding the moment of death. Maybe Aurora is trying to tell me something I do not want to hear. Trying to make me understand that we are both echoes repeating the last moments of our lives because moving forward means accepting what we cannot change. Maybe the trunk search is not about finding evidence. Maybe it is about checking to see if I am still real, if this interaction is still happening, if either of us can escape into a future that neither of us will reach. I am going to close the trunk now. She will drive north. And tomorrow at 2243, I will pull her over again and search the trunk again and wonder if this is the night one of us finally understands how to stop. The station basement is not on any blueprints, and I know this because I checked every archive after I found what they keep down there. My name is Mackenzie, and I have been a sergeant with the Central District Police Department for 11 years. I earned my rank through solid police work, passed every promotion exam, maintained a clean record, and never questioned what happened in the parts of the station where patrol officers were not supposed to go. That willful ignorance ended 6 months ago when I went looking for old case files and discovered a door that should not have existed leading to a space that violated every principle I thought this department stood for. It started with a simple records request from a defense attorney looking for evidence from a 2011 assault case. The file was supposed to be in the basement storage area, where we kept closed cases older than 5 years. I had been down there dozens of times, knew the layout well enough to navigate without checking the directory board. Rows of metal shelving holding boxes organized by year and case number, adequate lighting, temperature control to preserve paper records, standard archival storage that every department maintains for legal compliance. I found the 2011 section and started searching for the case number. The box I needed should have been on the third shelf, but that spot held a different case entirely. I checked the adjacent boxes thinking someone had misfiled it, then expanded my search to the entire 2011 section. Nothing. I was about to call the records clerk to ask if the box had been moved when I noticed the wall behind the shelving looked wrong. Not structurally wrong, just dimensionally inconsistent with how I remembered the room being laid out. I moved several boxes and discovered the shelving unit was mounted on wheels, designed to roll aside like the compact storage systems some departments use to maximize space. I pulled the unit away from the wall and found a door painted the same gray as the concrete, nearly invisible when the shelving was in place. No label, no signage, no indication of what was on the other side. The handle turned easily when I tried it, unlocked and apparently in regular use based on how smoothly it operated. The door opened onto a stairwell descending deeper into the building's foundation than should have been possible. The station was built in 1978 on a concrete slab with a single basement level for storage and mechanical systems. There was no sub-basement on any architectural plan I had ever seen. But the stairs went down at least another full story, ending at a hallway illuminated by motion sensor lights that clicked on as I descended. The hallway was clean, recently maintained, with painted concrete walls and a floor that showed regular foot traffic. 3 doors on the left side, all closed, all with numeric labels instead of descriptive signage. At the end of the hallway was a larger door with a small window reinforced with wire mesh. I approached the first door and listened. Nothing. Tried the handle. Locked. Moved to the second door with the same result. The third door was unlocked. I opened it slowly and found a small room containing a bed, a toilet, and a person. A man in his 40s sitting on the bed reading a paperback novel looked up at me with an expression of mild surprise, but not alarm. He asked if I was here to bring dinner or if this was another interview. I asked him who he was and why he was in a locked room in a basement that should not exist. He told me his name was Marcus Holloway and he had been a resident here for 7 months. I did not understand what he meant by resident. He explained very calmly that he had filed a complaint against 3 officers for excessive force during an arrest in March. Internal Affairs interviewed him once. Then 2 officers came to his apartment that night and offered him a choice. He could withdraw the complaint and forget what happened, or he could be relocated to protective custody for his own safety while the investigation continued. When he refused both options and said he was contacting a lawyer, they brought him here. I told him this was impossible, that police departments do not detain citizens without charges or due process. He laughed and said I should check the other rooms, talk to the other residents, learn how long this had been happening before I decided what was possible. I left his room and tried the door at the end of the hall. It was unlocked, opening into a larger space that contained 6 more beds, 4 of them occupied. The people in that room told me similar stories. Complaints filed against officers, witnesses to misconduct, activists who organized protests about department practices, a journalist who was investigating corruption. All of them offered the same choice, all of them choosing resistance, all of them ending up in this basement being fed and maintained, but effectively disappeared from society. No charges, no court appearances, no contact with the outside world. Some had been there for years. I backed out of the room trying to process what I was seeing and walked directly into Captain Reeves, my commanding officer and the man who recommended me for my sergeant promotion 2 years ago. He was not surprised to see me. He said my name in a tone that suggested he had been expecting this conversation eventually, then gestured back toward the stairwell and told me we needed to talk in his office. Upstairs, behind his closed office door, Reeves explained the system with the same matter-of-fact delivery someone might use to describe filing procedures. The basement facility had existed since 1983, created during a period when the department faced multiple lawsuits and oversight investigations. Command staff at the time decided certain problems needed to be removed from circulation until they resolved themselves or faded from public memory. They identified a handful of complainants whose absence would not trigger immediate searches, offered them protective custody or relocation assistance, and quietly moved them into the basement space. What started as a temporary solution for a few extreme cases became standard protocol for managing what Reeves called problematic witnesses. Anyone who posed a legitimate threat to officer careers or department reputation could be flagged for basement relocation. The system expanded over 40 years, rotating through different oversight as captains and chiefs changed, but the basic structure remained. Current capacity was 15 residents with plans to expand if necessary. Reeves told me this information while watching my reaction carefully, evaluating whether I was going to be cooperative or whether I was about to become a problem that required management. He explained that residents were kept comfortable, fed well, given reading material and limited recreation. Medical needs were addressed by a doctor who asked no questions. Nobody was tortured or abused. They were simply removed from circulation and maintained indefinitely. I asked him how this was different from kidnapping. He said the difference was legitimacy. The department had procedures, documentation, a chain of authorization for basement relocations. Everything was logged in secure files that could justify the detentions if anyone with proper authority ever asked to review them. The residents were classified as protective custody witnesses in ongoing internal investigations that never actually closed. Legally questionable, but defensible if framed correctly. He asked me what I planned to do with this information. I did not answer immediately because I was trying to understand the scope of what he was offering me. He filled the silence by opening a file on his desk with my name on it. Inside were performance reviews, commendation letters, and a promotion recommendation to lieutenant that had apparently been drafted but not yet submitted. He said I could sign the recommendation and join the small group of supervisors who knew about the basement and helped maintain operations. Or I could choose the alternative. The alternative was obvious. Residents who refused to cooperate or posed ongoing problems were eventually relocated to the basement themselves. Officers who discovered the facility and reacted poorly became residents. The system protected itself by absorbing threats rather than eliminating them. Reeves showed me 3 personnel files for officers who had worked at the station years ago and were now listed as resigned or transferred to other jurisdictions. All 3 were currently in the basement. One had been there for 6 years. I signed the promotion recommendation, told myself I was buying time to figure out how to expose this, how to contact federal authorities or media without getting flagged for basement relocation myself. But that was a lie I told myself to justify what I knew I was actually doing. I was choosing survival and career advancement over principles that suddenly felt very abstract when confronted with the reality of becoming a permanent basement resident. I have been a lieutenant for 5 months now. I coordinate the rotation of officers who deliver meals and supervise the basement facility. I review files on potential new residents and make recommendations about who should be offered the choice and who should simply be relocated without negotiation. I maintain the documentation that justifies all of it in language that sounds official and necessary. Last week, I flagged a community organizer who has been documenting traffic stop patterns and organizing complaints about racial profiling. She will be offered the choice soon. I tell myself she will probably accept relocation assistance, and this will end quietly. But I know if she refuses, I will approve her basement transfer and add her file to the secure cabinet where we keep records that will never be audited or questioned. I see my reflection in the window of my office sometimes and barely recognize the person looking back. I became a police officer because I believed in justice and protecting people who could not protect themselves. Now I protect a system that disappears people who threaten our statistics and our funding. I escort new residents to their rooms and tell them it is for their own safety while they wait for investigations that will never conclude. The worst part is not the moral compromise or the knowledge that I am complicit in something that violates every oath I took. The worst part is how easy it has become, how quickly I learned to rationalize each decision, how naturally I slipped into thinking about people as management problems rather than human beings with rights I am supposed to defend. I have escorted 7 people to the basement in 5 months. I remember their names, but I do not think about their faces anymore, because thinking about them makes it harder to do my job. I will probably retire from this department in 15 years with full pension and commendations for exemplary service. Nobody will ever know about the basement facility because everyone who discovers it either joins us or becomes a resident. The system is perfect in its self-protection. And I am part of that system now, willingly, because when given the choice between standing up for what was right and protecting myself, I chose exactly what most people choose when the consequences become real instead of theoretical. I chose survival and told myself there was no other option, even though I know that was never true.